And now let us raise a calamitous applause for Mr. Bob Greenberg.
Yay! Hello, everybody. So before we start up, let me ask a show of hands. How many of you have been to Africa? Okay. How many have a plan already to go? Okay, so we've got a pretty solid group, and the rest of you, I assume, just have an interest. Okay. So let me just set the stage a little bit. My wife and I are addicted. Okay. True story. We've been 17 times to Africa. And we're on a cycle now twice a year. So we've been there, done that. It is addictive. For those of you who've gone, you know that's true. And the vast majority of people who go want to go again. It is an expensive trip. It's a big trip, but it's worth it. Okay. And we've been to a lot of other places. We keep going back to Africa. So not everybody feels that way, but an awful lot of people do. So my hobby is photography, wildlife photography in particular. I guess I'm, I don't know, a semi-pro. I've actually sold one print. So I'm a professional, you know, I mean, I do this all the time. So most of the photography is mine. A few of the items are from my wife. I'm going to start out with a video that my wife took. If it works. Here we go. Oh, we were probably 15 feet away, but we're in a vehicle, so you're safe. But anyway, he's calling to find the rest of his pride. And that's why they do that. And when you're on safari, let me turn this down a little bit here. When you're on safari at night, you hear them calling pretty commonly. This is pretty rare to see them in the daytime doing that, but it was really fun to see. So one takeaway you should have is you never know what you're going to find. Okay. Okay. Let me just set this stage here, agenda. The first hour is going to be all about the animals. I can tell you some of our experiences, talk about some of the things that we've seen, a little bit about conservation. I don't want to dwell on it, but it's something you should know. And then the second hour is about going to Africa. Some of the things that you can consider, different ways to approach it. What is a day in safari like? Different accommodations and optional things that you can do when you go on safari. So in between, obviously, we'll have a break, okay? Africa, obviously, is a continent. So when people say they're going to Africa, it needs a little definition, okay? There's 1.3 billion people in Africa, all different tribes, all different religions, all different cultures, all different experiences. So by way of narrowing it down a little bit, for example, in Kenya, there are 45 tribes. So when someone says, gee, what are the people like? You can't really generalize, okay? And someone, by the way, whoever did respond to the survey, thank you for doing that. It really helped me with this. Someone said they wanted to hear about the cultures. It's a challenge, okay? Just because of what I said. And as a side note, there are trips that are culture oriented that will take you to some of the tribes, but that's not really a safari. That's a different kind of a trip. Safaris are about animals, okay? So I'll cover this in more detail later, but safaris basically are from here down. That's typically where you find them. And we'll go into more detail in the second half. Oops. So we'll start with lions. Lions are cats. And any of you have cats know cats sleep a lot. Okay. Lions sleep 20 some odd hours a day. They don't usually sleep in a tree, but this one had so much to eat, I think she couldn't move. Okay, so you can see the tummy there. I mean, she really is full. Lions have a wonderful social structure. They live in prides, and the pride can be anywhere from a half a dozen to 30 different animals. Most of the adults are females or lionesses. There's typically a few males, but when the males mature, they're kicked out. So what you're looking at is a society where all the females help to raise the cubs. And by the way, the cubs are, I mean, all the baby animals are so cute. Okay, they're so fun to watch, whatever they are. But I mean, cubs in particular are really fun. And yeah, I mean, the lionesses, the adults are very patient. The cubs are climbing all over them. They don't care. Okay, so it's fun to watch. One of the things we like doing, because we've gone back so many times, is we like seeing the animals maturing. And this was really two very unique sightings that we had. On your left, there's 7 young male lions. And for those of you who've been, you don't see 7 male lions at one time, okay? But there's 7 male lions there. And that was in November of 24. In June of 25, 7 months later, this is what they looked like. It was amazing, just amazing. So they really matured. And there's only 3 in that picture, but there's still 7 around. One of the things that's really important to know is that the females do pretty much everything, okay? They do the hunting, they do the raising of the babies. Yeah, just like here, exactly, yeah. I'm not going to go down that road. Anyway, they are the day-to-day stuff they handle, okay? The males have 2 functions. One of them is making babies, okay? And for any of you who've seen it, what happens there is the female kind of attracts the male. And then for the next 3 or 4 days, every 10 or 15 minutes, they're busy, okay? So it is quite a deal, quite an ordeal, I guess is the way to say that. The other thing that the males do is they keep the pride safe. And it's really important, obviously, to keep the pride safe. The females, obviously, will fight off whoever they can, but the males are much stronger. Every 6 or so years, the male who is the dominant male can no longer do that. They're just getting tired, they're old, whatever it might be. And another male or group of males comes in and takes over their prides. When that happens, they kill the cubs. So it really is traumatic. But what happens is that they want their own progeny. They don't want any other bloodlines there. So that's what goes on.
Do they kill grandpa too?
No, well, they may. I mean, the male may be killed or maybe just chased out. But being a male is a tough life, even though they don't do anything, okay? But it's a tough life. That's what I'm talking about, the lions now, not me. But anyway, the females do the hunting. The males, as I said, just stand around and look pretty unless they're needed, okay? This was what we call our Nat Geo sighting. Set the stage. We were in the vehicle, obviously. We came on a half a dozen of these lionesses circled around a warthog that they had caught. And they were sitting there eating or lying there eating. And whenever there's a lion kill, you'll typically have other animals around that are hoping to get a piece of the action. So there's hyenas and jackals, there may be vultures around, all of them are there. So we're watching all of this going on. And in the distance, there was a group of these Cape buffalo. Well, the Cape buffalo are also prey to this particular pride of lions. That's not common, but it was the case here. So they were not happy that the lions were there. And they gradually came up and then kind of went away because they were afraid and came closer and went away, came closer, went away, until finally one of them came up and tried to gore this female and she lashed out at him. And we're watching all this. Is really something to see. All of a sudden, everybody disappeared. just complete chaos. Everybody ran away. And a big male lion came, just kind of walked in, picked up the food and walked away. Okay. Like I say, you never know what you're going to see. Cheetahs. Okay. Cheetahs, by the way, there are 3 big cats: lions, leopards, and cheetahs. Okay, cheetahs, as most of you probably know, are the fastest, but they're also the weakest of the cats, the big cats. They have a hard life. So when the female matures, they're on their own, as opposed to lions that have a whole pride around them. These are solitary animals. And the only time you might see another adult is if there's a mating time going on. So they raise the cubs by themselves. They do everything by themselves, which is a real challenge. I mean, being a cheetah mother is really, really tough. In the best of times without a cub, cheetahs make about half of their kills. And, you know, they run like crazy. They catch their prey, whatever it is. About half the time they don't make it. When they have cubs, it's a much lower number because the cubs interrupt them. They go scaring the prey, whatever it might be. It's just really difficult. And of course, mom has to worry about other predators going after her cubs. So it's a tough, tough situation. Moms, and most of the animals, by the way, the mothers are incredible. This was on your right. I'm sorry, on your left. This was a case where it was raining on both of these pictures. But anyway, where the cub went up in a tree and wasn't sure how to get down. And so mom went up there and was saying, hey, it's okay, you can figure it out, whatever. Okay, so they are really, really wonderful to see with their cubs. The males on the other side, it's pretty common that the males, as they mature, form what are called coalitions, where there's multiple males that stay together, hunt together, and so forth. And this was a coalition of 3. There was a real famous coalition of 5 in Kenya. And that lasted for several years and then kind of split apart. This is what it's like trying to feed yourself when you're a cheetah. And that's a jackal, by the way. You have no idea how loud this was. And you can see the cheetah is really bothered. So being a cheetah is a tough life, but they sure are beautiful. Yep. This was a really unique sighting. This cheetah was called Sylvester. Unfortunately, he's gone now. Sylvester was found as a baby that was 2 days old in Zimbabwe. And his mom had been killed. A ranger by the name of Sylvester found him, brought him to a small nonprofit that had a couple of veterinarians in it that was next to one of the camps that we stayed in. And they hand raised him. So every day they would bring him over to the camp. You could pet him, you could walk with him. It was really an amazing deal. Well, in this case, my wife was sitting there on that deck. He was sitting next to her. She's petting him. He's purring. And he just decided to lie down. Okay. So needless to say, we have this picture on our wall like this big. Okay. So leopards. There are actually 9 species of leopards, only one of which is in Africa. When I was doing the preparation for this, it just kind of struck me. There's clouded leopards and snow leopards and what have you. So, but the ones that are in Africa are just leopards. Okay. Look something like cheetahs, but much stronger and not near as quick. Okay. This was a sighting where mom there had caught an impala and was dragging it over to a tree because right after this, she grabbed it, carried it right up in the tree and put it over the top of a branch. which is what leopards do, because they want to protect their prey or their food. So they don't want hyenas or other things to come take the food away from them. So they carry it up into the tree and hang it over a branch. They spend a lot of time up in trees, not just eating, but sleeping and doing whatever. They are so strong, though. This impala, which is the animal down here, weighed about probably 80 pounds. She grabbed it, just carried it right up the tree. So they are really strong. Okay. Leopards are pretty elusive. In most places that you might go, they're hard to find. Now, the guides are incredible. I mean, they have, I don't know what it is, 2100, 2010 vision. They find animals you'll never see. But finding leopards is tough. And so on a typical trip for us, which might be 10 days, 2 weeks, we might see 2 of them, where we'll see a lot of leopards or lions rather, or something else. But leopards, a lot of times, the way that you find them is they're up in a tree and you see the tail hanging down. Okay. You don't see the animal until you get really close. But they are beautiful, beautiful animals. Exception to that, this is an exception to every rule. Okay. This young leopard was just sunning herself, sitting on the rock. We actually found them. We had our 11-year-old grandson with us and his mom, our daughter, and we came around this rock and there she was. He said, "Oh my God, so beautiful." Okay. So really, if you ever get a wide open sighting like that, it's pretty spectacular. This is kind of a superstar in Kenya. This is a melanistic leopard, normal in every way except for the coloring. It's a genetic thing. And so Giza is her name, has become a big star. All the photographers want to go take pictures of her. And so this little remote camp out in the middle of no place, which is near where she is, has become really popular. But that's Giza. And by the way, anytime you have questions or comments, please just shout them out or let me know. Yes, please.
Are the leopards dangerous to humans, or were you
Afraid of them when you were there? I'm a teacher.
Okay. Yeah, I guess we need to use the mic because we have people on Zoom. Are the leopards dangerous? Are you afraid of them? I wouldn't want to pet one. But no, I'm not afraid of them. And when you're on safari in general, when you're out away from your lodge or your camp, you're in a vehicle and you're absolutely safe in the vehicle. But leopards have been known to attack people. And if you were silly enough to be out on your own in the middle of the night or something, you might have a problem. Okay. So elephants. I think most of you know. Oh, you got another? Okay, down here. Hang on a sec. There you go.
Would you recommend getting a better camera than your iPhone?
I mean, I'm a photographer, so I would say yes.
Because these are spectacular photos.
Thank you. Okay. I'm a photographer, but loads of people go there with iPhones. Okay. The limitation to an iPhone or Samsung or whatever is they don't have a big zoom. So that's the limitation. But whatever you do, don't buy your camera the day before you go. Learn about it, figure out how to run it, make sure you're comfortable with it before you go, because I guarantee you otherwise something exciting will happen and you'll be fiddling with your camera. Okay. Use whatever's comfortable for you. Okay. Elephants. I think most of you know elephants live in a herd, in a group. It can be anywhere from a handful to 20 or so, or 30, run by a matriarch whose main role is to remember where the food and water is. And she may lead them 20 or 30 miles sometimes to make sure that they survive. It's pretty incredible. Elephants jointly take care of the young and they protect them. There was a recent case, I don't know if anybody saw it, but there was, I don't even remember, I think it was a lion or something that was going after the young one, and all the elephants circled her, all the elephants circled the baby and protected it. And that's what they do. One of the really unique things with them is these giant animals, a whole herd of them, maybe 20 of them, can walk by your vehicle and you barely hear them at all. I mean, it's stunning. They're just really, really quiet. So pretty exciting, and they're lovely. I mean, very emotional animals, very sentient. They're really quite something. And by the way, I'll talk about conservation later. These guys have had problems because of their tusks being taken for ivory. Okay, so like I said, let me just leave that for now. One of the issues with elephants is they are browsers, meaning they eat from the trees and from the bushes. They take the small branches and the leaves and so forth. One of the problems is if there's a lot of elephants, they decimate an area. And you can see when you're out, you'll see an area that all the trees are knocked down, everything is kind of desolate. It's because there's a lot of elephants around. And so in some national parks or some countries, they feel they have too many elephants because when the area is desolate, it doesn't support other animals. And so they may, what they call cull, which means kill some of them, or they may move some to some other areas. Okay. How many of you have done a gorilla trek? Nobody. Okay. Really an amazing thing to do. The way that works is, and by the way, they're in Uganda or Rwanda only, because there's one mountain that basically is shared by those two countries. The way that the trip works is you're brought to that area down the base of the mountain. There is a culling, if you will, of the tourists by what strength they think you have, because you're going to walk up into the mountain. And so if you're old folks, they're probably going to put you in with the old folks group. If you're young studs, they're going to put you in with that group. And you're going to walk anywhere from an hour to 8 hours, possibly. And the way it works is they have spotters out that know where the families are. But of course, the families move. And so they have your chances are extremely high that you're going to see them, but it's not 100% guaranteed. And so you hike up in the mountain. We were fortunate with the old guys. And so we had about an hour or two walk up the mountain, and you get to spend an hour with them. It's an amazing experience. They're absolutely, I want to say human-like, but we're maybe gorilla-like. But you can see the intelligence. Most of the time, the adults are just either eating or lying down, but the young ones are crazy. They're swinging from the vines. They're running back and forth. I mean, it's, chaos. Quick story. The one over here, who's the young one who's eating. I was taking a picture this way. He came up behind me, swatted me in the butt because he wanted to go by. Okay. Now you're supposed to be quiet. I was not quiet. Okay. So, you're supposed to stay a certain distance from them. They don't know that. They don't care. But humans are supposed to stay away. But it is an amazing experience. If you have a chance, do it. This is one of the success stories for conservation. In 1981, there were 254 mountain gorillas left. Now there's over 1,000. It's really a success story, and it's because of tourism. What happens is these countries have realized that the gorillas have value. They bring tourists, which brings money, which brings jobs, brings education, does all kinds of other things for the locals. And the money that we spend there is used to provide all of that and provide jobs in the hotels or whatever around, and also to provide for healthcare as needed for them and rangers to protect them. So really great success story. There's lots of other primates. Okay, these happen to be baboons, and I call this one Tango. Boom, 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 boom. Those of you who've been, have you had an experience with vervet monkeys? You have? Okay. These are little thieves, okay? Anywhere you find them, they will steal anything they can get their hands on, especially food, okay? I mean, we've had camps where we've eaten outside, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, they come jump up on the table, grab the food, and run off, okay? It's like, what? It's unbelievable. But in many of these camps, you have to lock the door to your room or the zipper to your tent or whatever, because they'll go in and take things. So they're quite enterprising, I guess is the word, but beautiful to see. Baboons. And by the way, the vervets typically will be in small groups, maybe half a dozen or so. Baboons live in what are called troops, which can be hundreds long or hundreds of animals. We had a situation where we were in Tanzania in kind of a jungle area, came down the road, and we couldn't go any further because there were hundreds of baboons on the road. And you've got all the little babies running around, and it's just really, really fun to see. It was a great roadblock, believe me. It was really fun to see. So wonderful to see. But again, they're thieves as well. They're also can be pretty nasty if you look at these teeth. They actually can kill a leopard. So you don't want to mess with baboons, which has created a problem in areas where there's an overlap with like a town or something, because they figured out that if someone's carrying a bag, it probably has food in it. So they will go grab the bag, and I don't think anybody wants to fight with them. But baboons are really, particularly if there's a troop of them, a whole bunch of them, it's really fun to see. At night, they go up in a tree because they want to get away from any predators. And by the way, in Africa, you have just stunning sunrises and sunsets that are just beautiful. Okay, this happens to be in Botswana. So let me talk for a minute about the Great Migration, which lots of people have heard of, and someone's going to one soon. It basically is a year-round thing. People only think of the crossing as the migration, but this is a full year cycle. And what they're doing is there's 1 million to 2 million animals, mostly wildebeest, and about a third of them are zebras. And they're following the good grass. So early in the year, they're down here in the southern part of the Serengeti area called Ndutu. In our summertime, or August, September, October, they're doing those river crossings we were talking about, and they go up into Kenya. So there's this cycle that continues all the time. And it is quite something to see. By the way, when you've got 1 million animals, it's unfathomable. You're driving, and over the horizon, you've got this line of animals that's moving. It is just hard to comprehend. It's just amazing to see that many animals in one place. This is the famous river crossings, and it's something to see. Quick story, we went 3 days in a row to see this. And what would happen, and this was in northern Tanzania, what would happen is that all of the cars are back away from the edge of the cliff with all the tourists in them. The herd would come up, look down and say, I don't think so, and they'd go back. And then they come forward, and then they go back, and they come forward, and then they go back. And so here we are frustrated. Come on, jump already, go, 3 days later, finally, one of them jumps off, and then they all follow, okay? And it is something to see. It really is. It's an exciting deal. So one of the challenges there is as soon as the first one jumps off, all the cars, which might be 30, 40, 50 cars, go rushing over to the edge of the cliff so that they can have a good spot. It's almost like a demolition derby. So it's pretty wild. At the other end, down in the south, in Ndutu, there are about 100,000 wildebeest that are born all within a week or two. It is an amazing thing. And so you're able to see the births. And it's really interesting with any of these animals when they're born, they need to get up and get going because otherwise they'll be eaten by some prey or by some predator. And so we watched as this one was born. Mom walked away right after it was born, maybe over the other end of the stage here, looked back and said, well, and he or she, I don't know, gradually got up, very rickety, barely walked, figured it out, and then got going with Mom. Okay. So it's really quite something to see. The other picture is just one that I like. I don't have a story for you. Zebras. There are actually 11 different species of zebra in Africa. The one that you see the most and is part of that migration and everything is called a plains zebra. Excuse me. They're like horses. I mean, they raise a foal, which is what the babies are called. And they're typically in groups. And it's very common, by the way, to see them standing facing opposite directions. The reason they're doing that is looking out for predators. Okay, so, life in Africa is tough for a lot of these animals. This one is called a Grevy's zebra, which is in northern Kenya, which I think is the most beautiful. And unfortunately, it's endangered species. I'll talk about it later, but it is a beautiful, beautiful animal. And like horses, they want to get rid of ticks and flies and whatever, and they go into the dust. When you're on safari, there are going to be times when it's quiet. It's not every minute of the day that this stuff is going on because there's no editor cutting out all the bad parts. So when you're out, look at the birds. Even if you're not a birder, there's some spectacular birds there. And I won't go through all the details of them, but they have 2,700 species in Africa. Some of them are really colorful. Some of them are really interesting. So don't ignore them completely. And the guides all know the birds, okay? This one down here, excuse me, I didn't do what I was supposed to do. Okay, it's probably spam anyway. This one is called the lilac-breasted roller. It's one that most safari people have seen a lot, and it is a beautiful, beautiful bird. One thing, though, is they have a terrible call, okay? I mean, we had one that was, I guess he was disturbed because we were driving by, and it was this horrible squawk, like, that we couldn't believe coming out of this beautiful bird. But anyway, they're worth seeing. They really are. A couple of other species here. Jackals, basically like little dogs. These are a couple of pups, just roughhousing, playing back and forth. You typically find a male, and by the way, they're small, okay? You typically find a male and a female because they mate for life. And whenever there is a lion kill or something else, they're going to be around trying to get some of that food and take it back to their den to take care of the babies. And you heard what they sound like a little while ago. Hyenas get kind of a bad name, okay? People think, oh, God, horrible hyenas. Well, they have wonderful family structures. They have very cute babies, these little black ones. They gradually turn brown like that. They have a very much a structured society where the lead female basically is like a queen and gets everything, and everybody else kind of filters down from there. And they raise their babies in basically in burrows and holes in the ground. And when you're out and about, sometimes your guide might take you to one of those burrows and you sit there and watch as the babies come out. It's really, really fun to see. Besides the big three cats, there's other cats there. One that is kind of hard to see is called a serval. It's that one over there. It's a beautiful cat. It's about like a house cat size. And the first one we saw was from a balloon ride that we took in the Masai Mara. We looked down and we thought it was a cheetah. Turned out it was a serval. And you almost never see them. We've seen them, I think, 3 or 4 times now out of all of our trips. This last trip, we actually saw 2 of them. But it is a gorgeous animal. And it hunts its prey. It's got big ears. That's how it finds its prey, by hearing. Pretty wild. Hippos, the most dangerous animal in Africa. Hippos are very territorial. They spend their days in the water. And when you're driving along, you'll smell them long before you'll hear them. Okay? They do everything in the water. Okay? So it is stinky. They come out in the evening typically to browse on the grass. And the reason that people have problems with them is because a lot of the locals will go to the river to get water or to wash clothes, and the hippos are territorial. They don't like it. So it can be really, really a challenge there. When you're with a driver and a guide, you're fine. It's not a problem. But for the locals, these are the dangerous animals. Antelopes. There are many, many different antelopes in the safari areas. This is just 3 of them. My wife actually saw this on its way out, okay, being born. And we had a whole group of antelope there. These are Thompson's gazelles. There was a whole bunch of them there. My wife said, wait, there's something wrong with this one. Okay, well, P.S., she was giving birth. And so we watched as, again, she gave birth and then says, come on, let's get going. Okay. One up there are a water buck, which I think is some of the most beautiful of the antelopes. And then down below, this is an impala, and they do what's called pronging, which is what he's doing there. They jump like crazy, very, very fast animals. But there's a bunch of others that I won't bore you with here. So let me take a minute on conservation. Unfortunately, kind of a difficult story. Lions, which are the one that everybody thinks about when they think of Africa, half of them are gone in the last 25 years. There's only 25,000 left. Now, there's plenty of them when you go out and see them, and all of these animals you're going to have a chance to see probably. But half of them being gone in 25 years is a real challenge. Cheetahs, there's only 7,000 left. So they are possibly destined for extinction. They're really in trouble. Half are gone in the last 30 years. What's going on specific? By the way, with the lions, one of the challenges is Oriental medicine. There is a thought that some of their body parts have medicinal value. A lot of the poaching and everything that goes on, the body parts of the animals end up in Asia. Because as Asia now has become more developed and people became wealthier, more demand developed. So that's a challenge. Cheetahs we talked about. By the way, one thing with cheetahs, I told you how difficult it is for mom to raise the cubs. And they might have 4 or 5 or even 6 cubs, but 95% of them won't make it. So it's a real difficult situation. Another thing with cheetahs is that we love them to death. I just learned that each year, hundreds of them, the cubs, are sold to the Middle East as pets. And that's a real problem. But cheetahs have been desired as pets for centuries, going back to Loire Valley or whatever. And so this is nothing new, but it's a real challenge. Leopards, we don't know. The assumption is they're probably diminishing, but you can't see them that well. You can't count them. So nobody really knows. Elephants, we talked or mentioned earlier about poaching. 60% are gone in the last 10 years. About 400,000 left, which is a lot, but obviously you can't sustain 60% going. Primates, 75% of them are declining in population. They're not down by 75%, but 75% of the different types are declining. And the zebra that I mentioned earlier, 80% gone over 60 years, there's only 3,000 left. So a lot of these animals are struggling. And let's talk about why. The number one issue is habitat loss. Just like in North America, just like in Europe and South America, Asia, I'm sure, the land has been taken away from the animals. And so there's probably 5% of the original land available to these animals compared to 200 years ago. And when there's less land available, it can't support the animals. Poaching. Okay, elephants, we've talked about. Rhino, they're being killed for their horns, which is keratin, the same thing as your fingernails. Pangolin is an animal we've never seen, but it looks like an armadillo, just a small armadillo, and has scales. The scales, again, like the rhino horn, is made out of keratin, and they're being killed and taken for oriental medicine. Poaching, by the way, the actual event may happen because of some poor individual who just happens to live close by to wherever it is. But these are very sophisticated cartels, just like a drug cartel. And so it's a big, big business. And it's a lot of money in poaching. And so many of the countries push back and try and prevent this from happening. But it's a real challenge. You're dealing with some pretty sophisticated enemies there. And one of the things that happens is corruption. When there's a lot of money and you have basically poor societies, there's a lot of corruption. And so rather than somebody being arrested, they give them some money to the police or to the mayor or to the president or whoever, they get away with it. Another issue is climate. Things are changing. And so as it changes what's available to eat and to drink and what have you for these animals. And they're isolated in most cases in one park or something, so they can't move with the changes. And the last one is poverty and human-animal interaction. Many of the people in these countries are just barely getting by. And so let's say you're a subsistence farmer, you depend on your crop to eat. And then a herd of elephant comes through and takes everything. It's not a very good situation for you. So inevitably, elephants are killed. Or you're raising cattle cattle, sheep, something like that. Cats come in, kill your animals, you're going to go kill them. And so a lot of the conservation efforts are aimed at mitigating the interface between animals and people. And there's all kinds of things that they're doing about that. But it is a primary issue. There's loads of stuff going on. Okay. I mean, there is an international agreement to stop trade in endangered species, which isn't working all that well, but at least there's something. The governments are trying, the charities, local charities are doing it. And then major charities and zoos are putting a lot of effort into conservation. When we went to where Sylvester was, the cheetah that we could pet and everything, they asked where we were from. This is the veterinarians asked where we were from. We said California. And they said, "Oh, have you heard of San Diego Zoo?" Okay. And we said, "Yeah, we're members there." "Oh my God, really?" It was a huge deal. Okay. So they really do appreciate the efforts that are happening. And the zoos can either be doing on the ground work or funding on the ground work. And in some cases, they're taking endangered species, breeding them, and hoping to reintroduce them to the wild. One thing we can do is ecotourism, okay? Because we're helping the local communities. And the most successful conservation efforts consider both the people and the animals, not just the animals. So when we go there, we bring money, we bring jobs, we bring education, we bring all kinds of things that are really beneficial to the communities. And we make them value the animals because that's the source of the money coming in. We fund anti-poaching efforts. I'll talk about it in the second half, but there are private conservancies, which are private areas as opposed to public areas where the local communities benefit. And there's a lot of other things that come as a result of the money that we bring. The only caution I'd make is that over-tourism is a problem as well. So in some of the areas, like the Masai Mara Reserve or some areas of the Serengeti, if there's a cheetah sighting, you might have 30, 40 cars around it, which is a nightmare for the animal, even though they may get used to it. But that means the animal can't find prey. They don't know if there's a predator coming. It's a real challenge. So when you plan your trips, hopefully you'll try and avoid some of those areas, and we'll talk about it in the second half here. But overall, tourism is a real benefit to these communities and to the animals. So let's take a break. Oh, time to write. Okay, let's take a break. Come on back at 11 o'clock. And we'll talk about how to go to Africa and all the other stuff that goes with that. Okay. Okay. Welcome back, everybody.
I
Oh,
have a question from.
excuse me. Hold on.
Welcome back, everybody. We have a question from one of our Zoom audience members. Question is on panthers.
On panther,
Yeah, are they in
there are no
Africa?
panthers in Africa.
So it's more South American then.
They're in
I
South
think.
America.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Okay. Or, by the way, in Florida. Okay. No, they are. Yeah. So
Everything's South American except for Florida.
that's true. Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about going on safari. And this happens to be a guide that we became very friendly with in Tanzania. We've been to his house. It was really, really nice to get to know him. First thing to know, it's damn far away. Okay. Going to Africa, flying time is about 2 days. Okay. Typically, you fly to someplace like either Europe or the Middle East, and then you have a second flight down to Africa, wherever it is that you're going. So it takes one heck of a long time. The good news, at least for us, is jet lag hasn't been a problem for us going that way. You know, typically for us, we arrive in wherever we're going, spend the night by the airport in a hotel, and then we're off and we're fine. Coming back is a little different story. Okay. But it is darn far away. So that impacts this question. How long should you go? Personal opinion, I mean, you can go for 2 days if you want. It's up to you. But I wouldn't want to fly for 4 days and have 2 days in the bush or whatever. I would suggest at least 7 days in the bush. And we typically go 10 to 14, but I would say at least a week. I mean, again, value judgment on my part. Now, that the exception to that is if you're tying the safari in with something else, and I'll talk about that in a bit. But you do have options sometimes to do that. So the green areas are where most of the animals are. Let me go through the countries just so everybody's together. The top is Kenya, Tanzania, and that's what's called East Africa. These areas here, from here down, are Southern Africa, and you have Zambia, Zimbabwe, Botswana, and South Africa as kind of the major areas where the animals are. Now, we've been to all of those. We have not been to Madagascar. We have not been to Namibia. Madagascar has the lemurs and all that, which don't ask me about. Namibia does have some of the same animals, but it's much more restricted. It's mostly known for its huge sand dunes. So it's a little different kind of a trip for that. But the areas that are green are the ones that you typically find for safaris. So where to go? Obviously subject to opinion. I don't think any of these safari areas are going to give you a bad safari. Okay, so there's a value judgments involved. East Africa, which primarily is Kenya and Tanzania. Let me just give you our experiences or some feedback on those. Both of them are great. Kenya, the most famous place is the Masai Mara. Tanzania, the famous place is the Serengeti, and they join each other. So it's one ecosystem that just happens to have a dividing line in between it. Loads of animals, lots of great sightings and everything, but the experience typically is very different between those two places. Most people who go to Tanzania for their safaris will drive between different places because every maybe 2 hours, there's another different national park that you can go to. So when we've gone, we'll have one car with a guide in it that takes us on the safari game drives, but also takes us places from one place to the next. So in the Northern Circuit, as they call it in Tanzania, you can have very different topography. You have the Gorogoro Crater, you've got the Serengeti, you've got other national parks that are all fairly close together, and it's common to kind of go from place to place there. Because they're close and you're staying in one vehicle, it tends to be a little less expensive. I mean, I'm generalizing here because that's a variable with a lot of variables on it. but it tends to be a little bit less expensive than Kenya. And by the assumption is that you're not just wanting to go to one place and stay, which you could certainly do. Okay. In Kenya, if you want to go to multiple places, there are 5 or 6 hour drives in between. And so it's most common to fly in between. And that, of course, adds to your cost. And so a safari in Kenya, typically you'll fly to the Masai Mara, wherever it is that you're going. You'll have a guide from your camp or your lodge that will take you out on your game drives. And then you'll fly to the next place and you'll have the same thing over and over. Whereas in Tanzania, commonly, it's one person that kind of takes you through the whole thing. Kenya is a little bit wealthier country. The infrastructure is a little bit better, but you can have wonderful camps and terrible camps in any country. So it's not country dependent. Rwanda and Uganda do have some of the same animals, but mostly people go there for the gorilla treks. Okay. By the way, Rwanda, their main city there is called Kigali. It is an incredibly beautiful city. Everything is spotless. Every week they all go out. Everybody goes out and picks up trash or whatever in the streets. It's immaculate. It's an amazing place. Southern Africa. Botswana is the first on the list here. Botswana is pretty well-off country. They have very low density of tourism, and so it tends to be more expensive. And the famous place there is the Okavango Delta. They have other places as well. They have desert areas and other places that you can go. Beautiful place. By the way, Kenya and Tanzania are places where you have to be, I think, a little bit more careful as far as the density of tourists that you're around. So if you're planning your own trip, you want to ask your travel agent or something to make sure that you're not in with 50 people, 50 cars at the same sighting, okay? And we'll touch on that in a bit. South Africa. South Africa is quite developed. It has 2 major cities, a couple of people back there from South Africa. It has 2 major cities, which is Johannesburg, which is not anything special to see, and Cape Town, which is a beautiful city. And South Africa is a place where you could split a regular visit, if you will, tourism. They have a wine country. They have other things there. It's beautiful. And then tie that into some safari activities. So that is one of the places you can do that. The most famous place there is Kruger National Park, which is fairly close to Cape Town. We weren't fans because we felt it was too developed, but people have great experiences there as well. And they have a lot of other places that are available for safaris. We have been one time and we went to Cape Town and we went to Kruger. We didn't go to the other ones, so I can't speak to those. One thing that I know is in a place called Sabi Sands, they have basically habituated the leopards, so you'll see them all the time. I mean, that's, to me, is astonishing because every other place is very difficult to see them. But that is a place where you'll see them quite often. Zambia and Zimbabwe are poorer countries. They're less developed. You have less infrastructure, but it's a more adventure safari than a luxury safari that you would have there. And by the way, with the exception of Kenya and Tanzania, which have pretty much similar wildlife in most areas, some of the other places you have different animals that you would see. So for example, in Botswana, they have what are called wild dogs, which somebody was just asking me about, and which is great to see. There are some in Kenya, but they're not near as common, but it's a different experience seeing them than it would be, say, being in Kenya where you typically don't see those. So if there's a particular animal you want to see, you want to at least check if it's going to be where you're going, okay? And by the way, one thing I should mention is that the weather, and I think was brought up earlier, the weather in East Africa is very different than the weather in Southern Africa. So if you're just assume, and remember, this is the Southern Hemisphere, so it's opposite ours, okay, from a weather standpoint. So don't just assume because, say, Tanzania weather is fine, that South Africa weather is going to be fine. You need to check specifically for the country that you're going to so that you know what you're getting into. The only other country there is Namibia, which I mentioned earlier. Let me stop for a minute. Those of you who have gone before, did you go to East Africa or Southern Africa? East? Southern, I know over there. East, okay. Both, okay. How many of you have been multiple times? A couple back there, okay, and us. So you can have different experiences in different countries, which just makes you want to go back, okay? Let me just talk for a minute about conservancies versus parks. And it basically is private areas versus public areas. Now, I should tell you, we have been to all those countries, but we've been really focused on Kenya and to a lesser degree, Tanzania. So in Kenya, they have what they call conservancies, which are areas that have wildlife and they're next to, for example, the Masai Mara, which is a public area. These private areas are owned by the local people and they're leased to the safari operators. So that gives money to, in this case, the Maasai, which helps to support them and their families. And of course, adds value, makes the animals more valuable, which means from a conservation standpoint, it's really good. And it's to their benefit to graze their animals in a way that don't affect the wildlife, things like that. So typically in a conservancy, you might have 3 or 4 or 5 cars at a sighting or less, because they only allow a very limited number of tourists, a limited number of camps. Whereas in the public areas, a lot more people can go. And as a result, public areas tend to be a little less expensive. Conservancies tend to be a little more expensive. Okay. Oh, and it's very specific to the particular area you're in. But in some cases, in the public areas, for example, you cannot go for a night safari drive. In the private areas, generally you can. And you see different animals and it's a different experience. So there's just differences in the flavor, if you will, but you generally have the same animals, okay? Those of you who've gone, how many of you went with a group? How many of you planned your own trip? Nobody, okay. So we've always gone private on our own. Group tours have a real benefit because it's turnkey. You know, you write them a check and they take you. You don't have to do any planning on it. Private, you have to do some planning. So it's a little different approach. Those of you who've gone on groups, who have you gone with? What companies?
Stanford.
I'm sorry?
Stanford.
Stanford, oh, Stanford University, okay.
Overseas Adventure Travel.
OAT, okay. OAT again. Taub, okay. Most of the big travel companies offer safaris. The question always is, do they really have expertise? They may, I'm not saying they don't, but it's a question to ask. And when we work with planning our own trips in private, I work with specialized travel agents that have a lot of knowledge about these areas. They know all about everything, and they can be really helpful. By the way, safari started in England. I mean, not in England, but started by the British. And there weren't a lot of safaris, I don't think, in the Cotswolds or something. But anyway, the British started safaris, and they still have the most expertise of any of the travel companies. So these first two, which is Expert Africa, who we've worked with a number of times, Yellow Zebra, those are big travel companies that specialize in safaris that are in London. Africa Geographic is in South Africa, also a pretty big company. Good Earth Tours is a small operator in Tanzania that we've used a number of times. They're local there. So if you want to plan your own trip separately, I won't spend a lot of time because it sounds like most people are going in groups. There's help for you. Yes, please. We need a mic over here.
So when you say you plan your own trip or private travel, and I understand the concept of a group tour
Right.
and turnkey. It'll give you the itinerary and you just pay the fee and they take care of it.
Correct.
What is the difference between that and
Okay.
planning your own travel?
When you're planning your own travel, you set the itinerary with suggestions from the travel agent or whatever. You can make whatever changes or compromises you want. You can determine how long or short different things are. For us, particularly since I'm a photographer, I want to have time and be in control of my own vehicle and just be able to stay in a place if I want to. Whereas if you're with a group, it's kind of challenging because oftentimes, and those of you who've been on groups, a lot of times you'll have people who have different interests, and somebody wants to see all the birds or somebody wants to see lions only or whatever. It's a little challenging that way. So you just have more control if you're doing it privately. Size of the group? If you're arranging it privately, it really, and I'll touch on this in a minute here, but if you're arranging it privately, it depends on the level of camp or lodge that you're going to as to how many would typically be in your vehicle. And let me cover that in a minute. Okay. Yes.
Wait.
One
Hold
moment.
on. Sorry.
There we go.
You know better.
I do. Okay. All right. So on the private travel tours, if you're determining the itinerary yourself, what do these people do?
What do which people do?
The Yellow Zebra, Africa Geographic, what do the private travel companies do?
Well, they make all the arrangements for you. They arrange any flights or anything. They arrange the reservations in the lodges or hotel or camps or whatever. They make sure you have everything you need. They're basically there to help you.
All right. So you tell them what you'd like to do, and they set that up for you.
Right. And again, many of them have suggested itineraries. You can look at their websites and they say, well, if you want to go to Kenya, here's 3 different itineraries you might look at.
All right. As opposed to the group where you simply give your money and you go where they go.
Exactly.
Okay. Got it. Okay.
There you go.
Oh, another microphone. I wanted to throw in the specificity
Speak up a little bit, please.
of the Stanford trip. The leader is wonderful. He's an anthropology professor.
Mhm.
And what he does is he provides this trip to the sophomores. And so the trip is half sophomores. So you've got these fantastic young people there
Mhm.
with you. And this is what's special about the Stanford trip. Thank you.
Interesting. Yeah. And by the way, one of the groups that does group tours is the San Diego Zoo. So you go with a naturalist there. And I'm sure a lot of the others do.
So
by the way.
Bob, if this is like your first time and you've never been before,
Mhm.
and you want to get a real feel for the animals, how do you choose? It's your very
Okay.
first time.
We'll talk about it in a minute.
Okay.
Thank you. Good lead in. Anybody else? You have one in front here.
Coming.
But so with the private travel, are you not necessarily alone or you are alone?
You have a choice on that.
Okay.
And I'll talk about it in a minute. Okay.
I'm going to put my rah and kudos to OAT because years ago I went to Tanzania and Kenya, and we stayed in just wonderful tents and exotic places. They treated us with wonderful food, and we went to the Maasai, the crater, the elephants, the zebras. We went on 2 or 3 different rides early morning. You get up really early because that's when you see the animals, and then you were able to all these places have wonderful swimming pools too, because it gets really hot in the middle of the day. And then at night you go for another one. I mean, they were very accommodating. And I think that we only had 8 people in our group, and it was incredible. And we took a couple of plane trips too within that. It was really cheap.
Mhm.
It was good.
There's
I
a
mean,
benefit for you.
for all the things that were included, the price was wonderful.
Okay, very good. Thank you. All right. So let's talk about safari costs. Well, that's interesting that it's not showing. Okay. Well, so much for that. I guess it's free. Never mind. Okay, this was what I found here, if I can even read it, was from the Africa Geographic website, just trying to give some framework for cost. Okay. And this was in peak season, which I should tell you, by the way, is the most expensive season. We typically go either on the shoulder season or in an off season where it's much less expensive. Okay, but because the animals are still there. But anyway, on the peak season costs, they were saying for $400 to $500 per night per person, you're staying basically in a 3-star accommodation. They may have, and I wish this would show here, it's tough for me to even read. You're typically going to public areas as opposed to private areas. And the vehicles might have up to 9.
Do you want to try taking it off the presentation and see if you can look at it?
We can try.
Change the lighting.
Yeah, I don't know if it's going to matter. Oh, there you go. Perfect. Okay. Hey, isn't that nice? Thank you. Okay. What a boy. Thank you so much. Okay. So their comments were for peak season, $400 to $500 a night a person, 3-star accommodations. Game vehicles could have up to 9 people in them. Okay. So that's just a reference point. For mid-range, 500 to 1,000 a night per person. And that's 4-star lodges or camps. The vehicles might go into private areas, but more commonly public areas. And the vehicles might hold up to 8 people. And then above that, 1,000 to 1,500 a night, you're in a luxury level. It's 5-star. Typically in private areas, you might have 4 to 6 people in the vehicle with you. And it's a more luxurious kind of an experience. To respond to a question that came up, if you're doing this privately, you have the option of getting a private vehicle by paying more money, in which case it would be just you and your spouse or you and your group, whatever it is, would be the only people in that vehicle. And that obviously gives you total control over what's going on. Okay. But absent that, you're in with some other people in the car.
Bob, over here. I have a question from our chat audience. If you need a tour that works with disabled, or you might have a medical condition that you need special services for, what do you have to say for us?
I'm probably not the right source of information on that. I'm guessing that maybe some of the big tour companies would be good, but I really don't know. I haven't investigated. I would say they need to be able to get in and out of the high vehicles, which would be, a concern. And you do bounce around a lot on the vehicles. So if that's a medical issue, they probably shouldn't do it. But
so if you're in a wheelchair, it would be really compromising.
Yeah, on our first trip, there was a couple. She was 88, he was 93, and it was difficult for her to get in and out of the car. But she was ambulatory, and they helped her to get in and whatever. So if they're in that situation, it would probably be okay. But I think it's a specific question they need to ask the providers. I just don't know.
Thank you.
Sure. So anyway, that gives you at least some framework for the costs. The tour groups, obviously, you can just look and see what they offer. And, if it's a group thing, they'll give you a price and they'll tell you how many days it is. They'll tell you where they're going. And it's pretty straightforward there. But it's somewhere in this reference point. Yes, ma'am. Oh, sorry. You got to get the mic.
Just to bounce off what you were saying about the Jeeps.
I went 15 years ago, so things might have changed greatly. But the roads were not paved. They were well packed, and you're in a Jeep and you are bouncing for hours at a time. And I would be very hesitant if I had any disability that could be affected by
Agreed.
prolonged, riding in these Jeeps.
Yeah.
And just also be aware that you're in the wilderness and there are not facilities, if you know what I mean. And you also have to be prepared to go behind no bushes and no trees. And you need to have somebody with you who will stamp their feet so that you feel safe while you're doing your business. And they don't put that in the
That's right.
in the tour. So I'm just saying it like it is, guys.
Good point. Thank you. Yay! Okay, all good points. And by the way, I mean, as far as the roads go, you have to expect that you're going to have a bumpy ride to a greater or lesser degree. Okay. And you will, in some places, go off-road completely, in which case you're definitely going to have a bumpy ride. And in some areas, like, for example, in parts of Kenya, it's volcanic. So you're going over all these damn rocks all of the time. Okay. So it just depends on where you are, obviously, but you will definitely be bounced around a bit. Okay. We talk about the vehicles for a minute. There are two basic types, the one that's a little bit more closed and then the one that's more open. Before I go any further, because the question came up, it's very safe when you're in a vehicle, open or closed. Even if the lion is right there looking at you, it gives you a little frizzle, but whatever the word is. I mean, anyway, it's a little exciting the first time, especially, but you're totally safe. Okay. Most of the trips where you're going to the lodge or the camp, and the camp is providing the car, are going to use open vehicles. We prefer those just because we like being out in the open. Better for photography, correct. The closed vehicles are better if you're doing a lot of driving. So, for example, as I mentioned in Tanzania, oftentimes you're driving from place to place and you're on dusty roads, and it's just a lot better to be able to close things, and it's more comfortable that way. Okay. But then when you're doing the game drives, you have more around you. I mean, it's more closed off. But in either case, you're safe no matter what. In between areas, and I mentioned this earlier, in some places you fly, in some places you drive, and there's benefits to both, or pluses and minuses to both. If you're driving, you get to see the people. You get to see the towns, you get to see how they live. You may stop in a local place or whatever. If you're flying, you're going over those places. And obviously flying is more convenient, maybe more comfortable, and certainly faster, but it's more expensive. This, by the way, was a trip we did during the pandemic. So, that's why I'm wearing the mask. But anyway, both have their place. If you're going long distances, flying obviously can be beneficial. If it's relatively close, then you might be in the driving situation. So there are two basic categories of places that you could stay: camps and lodges. The camps typically are tented, but they're not like pup tents. I'll show you in a minute. Okay. And the lodges are more permanent structures, more like a hotel, maybe in a African style. So camps can be very luxurious. Okay. They all have bathroom, anything that we would go to, any of us, have a built-in bathroom there with a shower, with a sink. You don't have air conditioning, or heat or whatever, but they're pretty nice. Okay. They're pretty complete. And some of them can be really luxurious. So it just depends on, again, how much you pay. Typical story. They have, by the way, the food on safari is wonderful. Okay. I've never had a bad meal. I mean, even our 11-year-old loved the food. Okay. He even was rating them. This one's a 10, that one's a 9. But anyway, the food on safari is great. If you have any special needs as far as food, allergies, or whatever, they'll accommodate you. They really, really do a nice job. Yes. Hold on. Sorry. It's hard.
What sort of food is it?
It's Western food. I mean, Americanized or Europeanized or whatever food, depending on the camp, obviously. But the food is great. It's really, I mean, you really won't be hungry. I promise you. This place on that side is my wife's favorite place to eat in the world. It's just beautiful. You've got the forest around you. You're up on this deck. And this is a camp, by the way. So we're living in one of those tents. So typically in a camp, their central area is a little bit more developed. You know, they have an eating area, either indoors or outdoors or both. They may have a bar. They may have a reading area. So there's a central focus to the camp. You may eat outside in some places. And when you're doing that, you're in the wild. Okay. Now, this happens to be in northern Kenya, a place called Samburu. And the camp is right next to the river, and the elephants were there. So they had obviously people watching out for them, and they would tell you, okay, I think you need to move or whatever. But it was fun. Okay. By the way, I saw a video on Facebook the other day from a camp or a lodge, I guess, in Zambia, I think it was, where they had, a lodge, a very, big structure. They had a couple of elephants walk right through the lobby. Okay. So anyway, you never know. So lodges, again, are more like hotel kind of structures. They're permanent places. They are, again, depending on how much you pay, more or less luxurious. But they can be very nice. Again, the food is always great, no matter which one of these you choose. The lodges may have air conditioning. They would probably have heat. So it's a more hotel experience, I guess is the way I can say that. Okay. So you can mix and match if you're planning your own trip, or you can go obviously wherever the tour group is taking you. But both of these can be good. We like the tents because, again, we like being in nature. We like hearing the animals outside. We like hearing the lions roar in the evening. We like all that stuff. So, you might hear it in a lodge, but you're in a structure and maybe not as much. Lodges can have swimming pools. They can be really luxurious, just depends on where you're going. So a typical day, and you kind of touched on this. Typical days, you're up at maybe 5:30 or so. They'll wake you up, they'll bring you coffee and cookies or something. You get up and get going. And then for 3 to 4 hours, you're out on a game drive. So, and as was mentioned, that's when the animals are most active, when it's not too hot in the middle of the day. So you're out for 3 or 4 hours, and then you'll have breakfast. And the breakfast may be in the bush, where the driver basically brings it, sets up a table, and you eat there, or it might be back in camp. Then you have lunch, and you have some time to rest. Okay, because it's in the middle of the day, again, depending on where and when you're going. Middle of the day can be hot. You want to relax, and you're tired of bouncing around. So you have a chance to rest. And then in the evening or late afternoon, there's a game drive, maybe from 3 to 6 or so. You're out in the bush again. And oftentimes they have what are called sundowners, where they stop the vehicle in some more scenic location, set up some tables. They give you your gin and tonic or wine or whatever it is you want, and you watch the sun go down. Okay. Nice experience. Then you're back for dinner, 7 or 8 or so, and then you sleep. Okay. Now, in some places, you may do a night drive. Those are less frequent, less common, but depending on where you are, they may allow it. And it's an interesting thing to do. Okay, so if you have a chance, something to think about. So that's kind of a typical day. Of course, each one is going to be a little different, but that's pretty common. So let me talk about game drives, and I've touched on some of this already. That's where the action is, okay? I mean, that's why you're going. And game drives the way that it generally works is the drivers communicate by phone or by radio. And if there's a sighting, they know what's been found by other people. So if there's a leopard sighting or something, they communicate and it helps them to take you there. But oftentimes you just come across things, as I've told you before. You don't know what you're going to see. So the two lions over there, we were in Zimbabwe, I think it was. And it was kind of a quiet day. We weren't seeing a lot. We came around the bend in this road and lioness was just lying on the road. So of course we stopped. And then the male came and they greeted each other. And then this particular vehicle, we had a spotter in the back and he tapped me on the shoulder, said, look behind you. And there was a half a dozen lions behind us. And so these guys then walked right next to us and went to the back and joined the rest of the pride. So you don't know what you're going to find, okay? This is a hyena. And as I said, they will scavenge. And this was a wildebeest that lions had killed and he just grabbed what was left. It is very common to have animals very close to the car, okay? And as I said, you're totally safe no matter whether it's an open car or a closed car. But certainly the first time a big lion goes right next to you is pretty interesting, okay? But you are totally safe. And certainly for, when they're right next to you, an iPhone is fine, okay? You don't need a lot of zoom. Okay, we've got a question over here or comment.
So, Bob, what keeps the lions or the animals from jumping in to the car? I mean, it's like, because I've seen, I've seen bullfights in Spain where the bulls jump into the ring or something like that. So what keeps them? You say that with just total confidence. It's like, I'm going, what keeps them out of there?
Well, first off, in most of the areas, they're somewhat habituated to the cars. They've seen them a lot. And so they know there's no food there and they're busy with other things, okay? And that's in the vast majority of the places that you would go. You will sometimes see a cheetah that jumps up on the car. And cheetahs are just trying to get up high so they can find their prey. They have nothing to do with you, okay? So they're not after you. They're not going to do anything to you. They're busy looking in the distance. But that's infrequent. I mean, it's not something you see all the time, but it does happen. So really not a concern.
I just wondered, do these drivers, these guides have weapons on them in case your overconfidence results in something that you're not expecting?
Okay, some do, some don't. There was a video I saw again on Facebook, I think it was, and I don't remember exactly where it was, but this was a case where there was a seat in the very front of the vehicle. I mean, actually up over the bumper where the spotter was sitting. So he's hanging out over the front and a leopard came right to him. And he just sat there, of course, and didn't pet it or anything. And basically the leopard went away and that was fine. But that was a little scary for him. And that was a spotter, not a tourist, but tourists right there. The lodge, by the way, posted, a disclaimer afterwards. We don't try and do this. This is not something that we endorse. We don't. Please don't do this. Whatever. So I have not heard of a situation. Let me just put it this way: out of all of our trips, we've never heard of any situation where anybody was hurt. With the exception, there have been, I think, 2 cases where elephants have gotten pissed off and turned over a car or something. But because they are strong. I mean, they're big. Other than that, no problem. So how was your day, Mrs. Lincoln? Yes. Yeah. But it is extremely rare. Okay.
So we had some friends that went on a safari and they said that there were Maasai warriors in the camp. So that way you have to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night. You have to let them know and they will take you to the bathroom.
Okay, that's with unusual. A big gun. Yeah. I mean, the Maasai are there that would be in Kenya probably. And in any of those camps, but I'm surprised they didn't have a bathroom in their tent or in their place, but because that's normal. Okay. I mean, almost anywhere that tourists would go would have that. If they didn't, then absolutely, even at night, if you're, let's say you're in your tent and you're going to the main area to eat and it's dark, you have to wait for the guard to come take you there. Okay. So they, and by the way, I mean, we forget this, but these people live with these animals every day. I mean, when you're in some of these national parks, you'll see young children walking, going to school. Okay. And, you know, we just saw a lion down the street or whatever, down the ways. So they're very comfortable with them. They know the behaviors, they know how to deal with them, and they will keep you safe, is the way to say that. But normally you have a bathroom of your own. That's why I'm a little surprised on that.
In some of the countries like Rwanda, Uganda, I think of these dangerous gangs that kind of roam all over it. I assume that's not a problem there. They keep you away from that.
Are you talking about human?
Human,
gangs?
yeah, humans.
Yeah. Rwanda is not a
Most
concern.
dangerous.
It's a very safe country. I mean, there's other countries that might be, but all these safari countries that we're talking about are pretty safe. So not a problem. In the back there.
Regarding being in the vehicles, when I was in Africa, what they told us is the animals know that there's no ER in the bush. And they're always assessing as to whether what they're seeing is prey or predator.
Yeah.
And they would never attack the trucks because they're too big.
Yeah.
And since the trucks don't attack them, they're not worried about it.
Yeah, I think that's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the bottom picture there, that's the Mara River, the famous Mara River. It's a place where they stop to give us lunch. And so, or you can have the sundowners in a place like that. Very common to have that kind of experience. Excuse me. I mentioned earlier that these sunrises and sunsets are just gorgeous. Okay. That's actually a vulture up on the tree there in the silhouette. Okay. This was that same spot by the Mara River. We were out of the car waiting to have lunch. And this group of giraffes crossed the river. It was really just beautiful to see. And by the way, does anybody know what a group of giraffes is called? A tower. Thank you. Okay. Whoever names these things is nuts. Okay. Because every animal has its own group name. It's craziness. The bottom is in a place called Old Pajeda, which is a reserve that is focused on preserving the rhinos. Okay. And these are all the rangers. You don't normally see them around. I think this was a shift change or something, but there were 4 of them there and I just took the picture. Okay, a couple of interesting things here. The one on top there, that's actually a leopard in the middle and 2 cheetahs. Okay, this was a crazy sighting. We came into this clearing. There's a tree and there's a leopard up in the tree. And then 3 cheetahs came into the clearing. They didn't like the leopard there. The leopard didn't like them there. And so we watched for, I don't know, 15 minutes or so, chasing each other, going all around, I mean, screaming and yelling. Nobody was hurt, which was amazing. But it was a wild, wild deal. Okay. So you never know. Okay. This is what you do see a lot of. Okay. As I said, lions sleep a lot. Okay. So you will see that. And then again, you know, the silhouettes in the late evenings. Meeting people. Okay. The people are great. Okay. I mean, certainly the people that you are going to meet on safari are people that are trained and want to be around tourists because we bring money. So they can be a lot of fun. This was my wife fooling around here, but that was one of our guides in Kenya who is a Maasai. And so really nice people. You have a comment.
We were on a group tour
And we were able to make, when I say we, I went with my daughter, who is an elementary teacher. And she had met people who had gone on safari, and they encouraged her to bring sneakers and t-shirts. Now, I don't know if this is still something that takes place, but she also brought school supplies, and we made arrangements on Masamari to go to a school. It was not with a roof and four walls. It was under a tree, and the teacher had been notified that we were coming, and she brought books and pencils and papers and crayons and scissors and all sorts of stuff. But she also brought a Polaroid, and she took a picture of all the children. They had never seen themselves before. It was really revealing to see their reaction to that experience. But the children then wanted us to go see their houses, and they were, is the term dung? Dung huts. And they were very cordial, warm people that welcomed us. My daughter went in. I couldn't bend down that low. And it was a wonderful experience. The point I'm trying to make is you can make arrangements for a little side thing that you're interested in. The sneakers and t-shirts, I didn't know my daughter was skilled at bartering, but she was. And I don't know if there are still these little gift shops, glorified 7-Elevens, and they would barter with her. And she would come out with a cute bracelet or a cute this or a cute that, and that was for 2 sneakers, 1 t-shirt. And every once in a while, when there's a newscast or something from that area, I think I see my t-shirt,
So,
but it was a nice way to meet people.
It is, yeah. I'm going to cover some of that in a minute, not quite the same, but just a quick comment. Some people have been told to bring like pencils to give to the kids because they're poor, and it was to help the kids or whatever. And you'll see them when you're driving along near a town or something. You'll see the little kids out there, waving to you, wanting to get something. And one of our guides who has children of his own said, we really don't want to encourage that. And I said, why? And he said, because we don't want them begging. We want them to be independent people. So just a little feedback, but giving it to a school or something is great. Okay, moving along here. Lots of optional activities depending on where you are. Balloon rides. I'm sure there may be other places, but this is pretty famous in the Masai Mara in Kenya. Visiting a village, a Maasai village in this case, which is quite an experience. And that's one of those dung huts there that you were talking about. What they're trying to do is to get you to buy their jewelry and stuff that they hand make. And one of the pictures I have is about that. Where I'm feeding the elephants there, that was at one of these small veterinary nonprofits. They were taking care of some elephants that had been hurt, and so we got a chance to feed them. In Botswana, you can go in what's called a Makoro, which is a little canoe, it's very relaxing. You get to see the animals from a little different perspective. That is Victoria Falls right here. And they have a tourist thing called the micro lights, which is basically a motorcycle with a wing and a propeller. Okay. And my wife and I, both of us did it. It was fantastic. I mean, you can see, they have cameras on the wings is how you get these pictures. But you can see, just right over Victoria Falls here. I was the next to the last flight for that. And by there's a pilot, obviously. You're not handling it yourself. I was the next to the last. My wife was the last one for the day. And she's flying along, and the pilot said to her, "Oh, that's George Bush's motorcade." And it was, okay? So you never know what you see. You never know what you're going to see in safari. I'm sorry, the animal over here, those are elephants there. Okay. It's kind of hard to tell, but it is an elephant. Anyway, this is when we took our 11-year-old grandson with us. And that actually was a place that trained police dogs. And it was fascinating. It was really fun to see. They had mostly bloodhounds, and then they had a Springer Spaniel. And one of the things they did was they handed each of us a bullet. And we were out on an open area, big open area. And he said, okay, hide this anywhere you want. And so I hid mine underneath some cow dung, thinking there's no way in hell he's going to find it, okay? He did. And he just zeroed in immediately on that. It was pretty incredible. But anyway, these dogs are used against poaching and for police work. So that was really a fascinating little side note. And then everywhere you go, they want to sell you handmade goods, all kinds. It was the only picture I had that was close to it, but they have all sorts of beadwork and carved wood things and everything. It's really plenty to buy. And you'll see there's lots of opportunities to spend money. A couple of tips. Pack light. The laundry is usually included. You don't need to bring a bunch of clothes, and you don't need to impress anybody with your clothes. You're in the bush. No formal gowns, none of that stuff, okay? So typically when we go, not typically, every time we go, we have one carry-on, a typical carry-on size bag, and that's it, aside from my camera equipment. So don't go with a lot of clothes. They'll wash them for you. Everything's fine. You don't need to go in safari clothes. People wear all kinds of clothes there, but don't bring a bunch of clothes. There's no reason to do it. Bring US dollars for tips. They love US dollars because a lot of their currencies are not doing well. And so if you give them a US dollar, it's worth more. Okay. All the camps and lodges take credit cards. Okay. The only one I'm not sure about is like American Express or Discover, but Visa and MasterCard, they certainly take. Okay. And they're happy to get your money. Each country has different health requirements. So check with either a travel doctor or look at the CDC website as to what the requirements are. Some of the countries have their own requirements. Some of them are recommendations from CDC on, you need this kind of protection or that kind of protection. When we go to Kenya or Tanzania, we do take malaria pills, although frankly, we've never seen a mosquito. So probably don't need to, but we're doing it anyway. But just be aware that you might want to check all this stuff. And get your visa or travel authority early. Each country is different. Most of them do require, a tourist visa or something. And if you have a tour operator or a travel agent, they'll tell you. Food is always great. Okay, we've never had a bad meal. And it is, for lack of a better word, Western style food. Some of them will, if you ask, will give you the local food or something. Maybe they'll have one item that's a local food, but generally it's Western style food. And it's very well prepared. If you have any food issues, just tell your tour group or your travel agent and they'll accommodate you. And the camps and lodges do have first aid kits, but they're not doctors, okay? So back to the earlier discussion about someone who had health issues, if there's a likelihood of having significant problems, I would think twice about it. You might want to have evacuation insurance where they'll fly you to the nearest hospital or something. That's a choice you can make. Many of again, depending on the country, they typically will have some kind of doctors that are available. And if it's a heavy tourist area, they may even have a doctor from Europe or America there, but that's not a hospital. Okay. So just be safe when you go there. Enjoy the sunsets and sunrises. They are spectacular. I don't have any pictures of it, but the sky in Africa is incredible because you don't have the light pollution we have here. And you have all these stars up there that you never saw before in your life. Okay, it's unbelievable. And of course, it's southern versus northern hemisphere. It's spectacular. So just enjoy the sunsets, the countryside, the people, as well as the animal. Any comments? Yeah, coming up here.
Okay.
Yeah, you talked about peak season for traveling. What
Yeah.
are the, say, season highs and lows? I'm thinking of the Kenya, Tanzania
Okay,
area.
Kenya, the peak season is a time when the Great Migration hits there, which is our summertime. That's the peak season. And I think, again, it may change a little bit depending on where you're going, but typically it starts in July and goes through like September, October.
The temperature as well.
Well, in Kenya in particular, you're on the equator. So it doesn't change that much from one season to the next. But what does change is how much rain you're going to have. So in that particular case, they have a rainy season and they have short rains and long rains. Long rains are like from March to April or May. A lot of the camps even close during that time. But for example, if July is the start of the peak season, you might go in June. We did. You get exactly the same experience, but you're paying less. So it's just how you want to do that. And by the way, on weather again, weather is changing, is much less predictable than it was. But broad brush, look at websites. I mean, like the ones that I talked about earlier. Expert Africa has a good website for that. There's one called safaribooking.com, which I've never used for booking anything, but they have very good information about the countries and the seasons and so forth. So just check that kind of stuff so you know. And I would tell you, by the way, we have a vision of Africa being hot. We've been really cold sometimes. So don't assume it's going to be 99 degrees, okay? I mean, particularly in the morning drives, depending on where you are on the season and everything, it can be damn cold. So we typically go with coats. We take them with us. So just don't assume it's hot, okay? There may be times when it is hot though.
About my earlier question, if this is your very first time and you want to go, what is your suggestion for our very first time trip to Africa?
Showing my bias, okay? I would say either Tanzania or Kenya. I mean, Tanzania probably a little less expensive because, as I described, you're not flying between places and you can have one vehicle take you through the whole trip. And you can see different things pretty close together. So I would say maybe Tanzania or Kenya. Either of those two are kind of my choice. Other people have different opinions.
If you were going to do like a 10-day trip
Mhm.
and 5 days with safari, the other days there are other things that you could do to add on to that. Would you be in safari?
Okay. So the question is, if you're going to do like a 10-day trip and maybe half safari and half something else, does that change my opinion of where to go?
Or should you do a longer safari?
Well, I would do the longer safari, but other people may not. This is very individualized. I mean, it's a matter of opinion. I think if I were going for the first time and I wanted to go to like Tanzania or Kenya, and I didn't want to spend the whole time on a regular safari, I would tie it in with Gorilla Trek, because that's right next to that area. And that's a totally different situation, okay? But if you're going, for example, in South Africa, as I mentioned, you have plenty of safari places that are relatively close to Cape Town. Cape Town's a beautiful town with a wine country and everything, and you can have a regular tourist experience there and then go to safaris for the second part or whatever. That help? Yes. Okay. What else? What other comments or questions? Private versus the, yeah.
Take down that as they leave. Yeah.
Okay. We'll get there. This one? Okay. She wanted a picture of that. Okay. So, thank you all for being here. If you have any questions or comments, let me know. Otherwise, have a great day.